As a result of your memo, local school officials and parents may not speak up in these meetings out of fear that the federal government will do something to them. So that's a poisonous, chilling effect. Apparently that letter wasn't actually supported by organization, but was sent by 2 unauthorized staff. So last week the organization disavowed it, since you and the White House based your memo on this delegitimized letter. I assume you're going to revoke your extremely divisive memo that you said was instigated because of that letter. That's a question.
Senator, the memo, which is referred to as one page, it responds to concerns about violence, threats of violence, other criminal conduct. That's all it's about. And all it asks is for federal law enforcement to consult with, meet with local law enforcement to assess the circumstances, to strategize about what may or may not be necessary, to provide federal assistance if it is necessary.
Madam Attorney General, let me ask you this question. Were you consulted by the White House before they deployed National Guard troops to cities in the United States?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House.
You won't even say whether you talked to the White House about this?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House with you, Ranking Member.
I noticed that. What's the secret? Why do you want to keep this secret? The American people don't know the rationale behind the deployment of National Guard troops in my state. The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
I've been on this committee for more than 20 years. That's the kind of testimony you expect from this administration. A simple question as to whether or not they had a legal rationale for deploying National Guard troops becomes grounds for a personal attack. I think it's a legitimate question. It's my responsibility. She refuses to answer as to whether she had any conversation with the White House about deploying national troops to my state. That's an indication, I'm afraid, where we are politically in this place.
Presumably, you wrote the memo because of the letter. The letter is disavowed now. So you're going to keep your memo going anyway, right? Is that what you're telling me?
Senator, I have the letter from NSBA that you're referring to. It apologizes for language in the letter, but it continues its concern about the safety of school officials and school staff. The language in the letter that they disavow is language was never included in my memo and never would have been. I did not adopt every concern that they had in their letter. I adopted only the concern about violence and threats of violence, and that hasn't changed.
Homan was the same guy who said there was a deal with Eric Adams. He said, if Adams doesn't come through, I'll be back. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to? Which brings us to the OPR investigation of prosecutorial misconduct by Emil Bovee, because he was also involved in that transaction. Yeah. What became of the OPR investigation of prosecutorial misconduct by Emil Bovee?
Yeah, Senator Whitehouse, to correct you for one moment, that would be the Honorable Judge Emil J. Bovee III to you.
Not at the time of this. He was an employee of the Department of Justice. And what became of the OPR investigation?
It's all pending litigation,
misconduct?
Senator. I can't discuss pending litigation nor personnel matters.
OPR customarily publicly says when there's an investigation, and at the end of it, they provide a summary. Why can't you say whether there's an OPR investigation and whether, if it's concluded, there's a summary?
Senator, I'm not going to discuss personnel matters.
The parents expressing their concerns about not only the curriculum, but also just generally the education of their children in public schools. Would you agree that parents have a fundamental right to be involved in their children's education?
Absolutely. This is the job of parents to be involved. And this is the role of the First Amendment to protect their ability to be involved. That's why my memo begins by saying that we respect the right to spirited debate about curriculum, about school policies, about anything like that.
Let's go on to other firings or terminations. Last week, the Justice Department fired at least 2 senior attorneys in the Eastern District of Virginia, including the office's national security chief, Michael Benary. It is reported that his firing came following criticism from a right-wing social media commentator who wrote, "One can only assume he was part of the internal resistance in the Comey indictment." In fact, he did not work on the Comey case. Instead, he was working on pursuing justice for service members killed in Afghanistan. How does firing a 20-year national security prosecutor enhance public safety?
Senator Klobuchar, I'm not going to discuss personnel decisions, but the personnel issue that I'm having right now is that all of my agents, all of my lawyers are working. My agents are on the street working without a paycheck because your party voted to shut down the federal government.
Unfortunately, the House isn't even back here. They're 18 days off the job to even meet with us to come up with a resolution that we would like to discuss with them about saving people's health care. Let's move.
So it's not,
You agree that a natural consequence of your memo could be chilling free speech, protected speech by parents protesting local school board policies?
Senator, the memo is aimed only at violence and threats of violence. It states on its face that vigorous debate is protected. That is what this is about, and that is all this is about.
What about harassment and intimidation? Are those federal crimes?
They are federal crimes.
What, are you referring to like witness tampering intimidation under 18 U.S.C. 1512, or what?
To 18 U.S.C. 2261A, which makes it a crime with intent to injure, harass, or intimidate, placing a person in reasonable fear of serious bodily injury through communications over the internet. Likewise, 47 U.S.C. 223A, making telephones calls with intention to harass. Now, I want to be clear, though, that those only are within, I take your point, those are only within what is permitted by the First Amendment. And the Supreme Court has been clear about that, too. In the Virginia versus Black case, the court explained when intimidation is not protected by the Constitution, and that is when it is made with the intent of placing the victim in fear of bodily harm or death. So that's what we're concerned about here.
The government's asserting the authority to summarily kill people. It says our cartel members through military strikes against boats on the open ocean in the Caribbean. Congress has never authorized such a use of military force, and it's unclear to me how the administration has concluded that these strikes are legal. I'm concerned with what the limiting principle is, whether the government could summarily kill people. It just declares our cartel members as well as unlawful combatants inside the United States, or if they were American citizens. This isn't about defending cartels, and these aren't hypothetical questions. President Trump assembled military leaders and said they would be needed to fight the enemy from within and to train in cities in the United States that he describes as chaotic and violent. Due process is the cornerstone of our Constitution. I'm deeply concerned about the authority our president seems to be asserting to summarily kill people suspected of criminal activity outside the law. As the chief lawyer for our federal government, you have a unique responsibility to ensure maintenance of our constitutional standards. How did you conclude that these strikes on ships or boats in the open ocean are legal?
Senator Coons, I'm not going to discuss any legal advice that my department may or may not have given or issued at the direction of the president on this matter. Regarding Venezuela, what I can tell you is Maduro is a narco-terrorist, and we announced I announced $50 million reward for his capture to bring him to this country to face charges. He is currently under indictment in our country. Drugs coming from Venezuela are killing our children at record levels.
And
They have
members
been
of this
flowing
committee are
into
as
this
passionate
country.
as you at protecting our families and our communities from fentanyl, but we also need to protect our sailors on the high seas who are conducting freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea from just an abject violation of international norms and standards about how we interdict ships on the high seas. We can push back on fentanyl and drug trafficking. Many of my colleagues have done so as former U.S. attorneys or prosecutors or attorneys general, but we have to do it in a way that is in keeping with the core values of our Constitution.
And one of the things that
Judge Garland, on May 11th, Tony Fauci testified that his agency, quote, has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Last week, his agency admitted that they had, in fact, funded gain-of-research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Are you investigating Tony Fauci for lying to Congress?
So the long-time rule in the Justice Department is not to discuss pending investigations, potential investigations.
Okay, that's fine. Do the same thing. You said it wasn't in your October 4th memorandum. It was in another office's memorandum. It wasn't another office's memorandum, Judge. It was in a press release from your office right here in front of me, October 4th, 2021, for immediate release. You're going to create a task force that includes the National Security Division. What on earth does the National Security Division have to do with parents who are expressing disagreements at school boards?
Nothing in this memorandum or any memorandum is about parents expressing disagreements with their school boards. The memorandum makes clear that parents are entitled and protected by the First Amendment to have vigorous debates. We don't, the Justice Department is not interested in that question at all. It is
Okay, so even in that case, what is the National Security Division, Judge? These are the people that are supposed to be chasing jihadists and Chinese spies. What does the National Security Division have to do with parents at school boards?
This is not, again, about parents at school boards. This is about threats of violence.
Okay,
The merger between Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and Juniper Network was settled. You authorized the settlement. It was the subject of a lawsuit to block it. The settlement produced virtually no concessions from Hewlett-Packard. It was a settlement that prompted criticism from the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize that settlement yourself?
As I stated earlier, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running the antitrust unit. And as I stated earlier, that is still a pending matter. As
Well,
you
you
should know
then
with a law
fired,
degree,
did you not,
that all
two-
mergers, if I can finish answering the question.
I'm going to,
If I
with
could
apologies,
finish. No, I'm
interrupt
answering
you
the question.
because my time is
No,
limited.
well then don't ask me a question.
Let
So,
me just ask you,
as
did
I
you,
said, you have a law degree. You know that not only are mergers agreed upon, but they have to go to a court of law to be approved. It's a multi-step process. And as I said earlier, that is still pending. And I have full faith in Gail Slater.
and Ms. Slater reportedly objected to the settlement.
Reportedly,
And moreover,
moreover.
2 of her top officials were fired, Roger Alford and Bill Sinner. Did you authorize and direct those firings after they objected to the settlement?
I am not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation in my office.
And one of the suggestions made by your U.S. attorney is parents can be prosecuted for repeated telephone calls. Not threatening anyone, just on the theory that repeated telephone calls could be harassment. Really?
Senator, I haven't seen that memorandum. I've tried to express as clearly as I can here.
I heard you, General, but this is one of your U.S. attorneys.
Senator, if you're thinking of
Again, I haven't seen,
Isn't that special?
technically chairing the hearing where Senator Durbin goes to vote.
Attorney General, I know you're tired of talking about the memo,
I'm not.
but did you say you're not?
I'm happy to answer any questions you have, Senator.
I think most of us and most of the American people are just sort of flabbergasted if your answer is you have no regrets about this memo. Is that what you're telling us? You think this was wise?
Senator, The obligation of the Justice Department is to protect the American people against violence, including threats of violence, and that particularly includes public officials. I think that is still a concern for the department. This memo doesn't do anything more than ask our law enforcement to consult with state and local law enforcement to determine whether they need assistance in this regard and whether there are any federal jurisdictional issues involved. The memo
General,
recognizes
you
the right.
and I both know that it is political hackery.
I have a question. In the merger that took place.
Which
that was
merger? You've
approved
listed many.
Involving American Express GBT. I understand that Brian Ballard, longtime backer and head of the law firm where you worked, was instrumental in lobbying the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversation did you have with Mr. Ballard?
Senator Blumenthal, I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service.
I am
you
not
lied.
asking
You
you.
admitted you
I am
lied
not
to be
accusing you
elected
of
a U.S. senator.
impropriety.
You
I'm asking
lied.
you
How
about
dare you? I'm a
conversations
career
with
prosecutor.
Mr.
Don't you
Ballard,
ever challenge my integrity.
had
I have
apparently-
abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial as Attorney General, and anything
You'll
with
answer that
my
question to
former
another of my
firm,
colleagues.
Ballard Partners.
Thank you.
Been carried out. When you look at the memo to parents, you've heard a lot about that today, and it's because we're hearing a lot about that. And I just have to ask you, knowing that you really helped bring to justice those that caused the Oklahoma City bombing, would you really honestly put parents in the same category as a Terry Nichols or a Timothy McVeigh?
My God, absolutely not.
Then why would you ever release a memo? I mean, did you write that memo? Did staff write that memo? What would have led you to do this? It is so over the top.
Senator, there's nothing in the memo that in any way draws any comparison, anything like that. This memo is about violence and threats of violence. It's not
Sir, I have to tell you that that may be your opinion. And you know, many times perception is reality. And reading that memo myself, Tennesseans reading that memo, what they found in that memo, what they heard you say was if you show up and you question these school boards, you will be deemed a domestic terrorist.
One career federal prosecutor who secured over 100 convictions in Florida. He also spent time in D.C. prosecuting January 6 cases. He received an outstanding review only 2 days before you signed a memo firing him. The memo cited no reason for his firing. Are you firing career prosecutors solely because they worked on cases like January 6th that the president doesn't like?
Senator Hirono, I am not going
Yes
to
or
talk
no?
about personnel matters with you.
Do you think a parent who makes a phone call to a school board member that she has elected, that school board member deems annoying, should be prosecuted, General Garland?
No, I don't. And the Supreme Court has made quite clear that the word intimidation with respect to the constitutional protection is one that directs a threat to a person with the intent of placing the victim in fear of bodily harm or death.
So my first question, Attorney General Bondi, is a simple yes/no question. Do you believe that government officials like Gregor Bovino are obligated to follow applicable court orders, whether they agree with them or not, yes or no?
First, Senator Padilla, you have gone on for over 5 minutes, and I wish that you loved your state of California as much as you hate President Trump. We'd be in really good shape then, because violent crime in California is currently 35% higher than the national average. property crime in California is 18% higher than the national average. That should be something that we should be talking about and working together on, yet we're not. And no, this is important. You're talking about all of my agencies, and I want to let you know what DEA has been doing, and they are working hand in hand with
I
Homeland
appreciate
Security.
that, and I'm going
No,
to be
you can't
asking
go
some
on for
questions
5
for
minutes
the
and
record
criticize
as
my agents
well.
who are out working
asked a simple
without
yes
pay
or no
right
question.
now because you voted
Mr.
to
Chairman.
shut down the government. They're
Mr.
out
Chairman.
there working without pay.
Mr. Chairman, I asked a simple yes or no question. Attorney General Bondi is
DEA,
refusing
4,500
to respond.
kilos
So let
of
me move on to
fentanyl
the
and
next
50 million
topic.
fentanyl pills
Because
off the streets.
while under your watch, your
FBI,
prosecutors
23,000
Mr. Chairman,
violent criminals. U.S. Marshals,
Mr. Chairman, order, please.
51,000 fugitives.
I'm trying to get, I'm not getting answer to my question. I'm trying to move on to the next question or the next topic. Mr. Chairman, order, please. Thank you.
You're the Attorney General of the United States. This was not a tweet you sent. This is a memo to the Federal Bureau of Investigations saying, go investigate parents as domestic terrorists.
That is not what the memo says at all. It does not.
Is it what the letter says?
That is not what.
Is it what the letter says?
I don't care what the letter says.
You don't care. You said it was the basis of your memo. You testified under oath before the House of Representatives. The letter was the basis of your memo. Now you don't care about the letter?
The letter and public reports of violence and threats of violence. My memo says nothing about domestic terrorism, says nothing about parents committing any such things. My memo is an attempt to get an assessment of whether there is a problem out there that the federal government needs to
The
resolve.
letter on its face.
You've mentioned that you can't discuss pending litigation, and I think the committee by and large accepted that answer. But I did notice that you spoke at great length about pending litigation, specifically with respect to the questions Senator Cruz asked you about the sentencing of the Kavanaugh defendant. That's pending, right?
He was sentenced to 8 years.
I understand that, but that's on appeal, right?
We will be appealing.
Right, so that makes it pending litigation. So you made an exception with respect to
No.
the Cruz questions.
Hold on. No,
but you
those
didn't
were-
answer
those were
any of the
things-
questions that you said were pending in litigation from any of my colleagues.
Those were facts that came out at the sentencing hearing. You're welcome to see the transcript of the sentencing hearing
I understand
with all the
that.
gruesome details of what they threatened to do to Justice Kavanaugh and other
I
justices.
condemn what that person did.
That was the sentencing.
But the point here is that that's pending litigation. You indicated you're going to be appealing. It's your right to do that. And you would not, you use that justification to not answer many other questions.
Justification, you're an attorney, Senator.
Okay.
You realize that.
I do want to go back to Homan. You know, there's a tape, right, with Mr. Homan? I mean, first of all, is there a tape that has audio and video of the transfer of the 50,000?
You would have to talk to Director Patel about that.
No, I'm talking to you.
I don't know the answer, Senator.
Yeah, you do know the answer to that.
Don't call me a liar.
I didn't call you a liar.
You just said I know the answer. I said I don't know the answer.
Well,
you have to talk to
okay, let
Director
me-
Patel. What I said is that
Let me
investigation
put it
was
another way.
closed.
If you don't know, why don't you know whether there was a tape and video?
Senator, I believe that was resolved prior to my confirmation as Attorney General.
Do you think that it is of public interest for the people to know what happened to the 50 grand that the FBI turned over to Homan?
Did you hear what I just said? That was resolved prior to my confirmation as Attorney General. That's why I said I would not know.
It's not resolved. There's $50,000. Homan has it, or somebody has it. Do you have no interest in knowing where it is?
You're not going to sit here and slander Tom Homan. The FBI and Deputy Director Blanche said there was nothing.
I'm not slamming Tom Homan. He got the 50
Tom
grand.
Homan is doing, how do you know that? Tom Homan is doing a great job, as our borders are, keeping your border state safe. You're a border state.
Thank you, Senator. They repudiated their letter. Why won't you just say you made a mistake?
Because they didn't.
Why would you say you made a mistake and you relied on bad information?
Because they didn't repudiate their letter. They repudiated language in the letter which I did not adopt and don't agree with. But their concerns are about safety in the schools and about violence, and this is a core concern of the Justice Department. That's why.
Because you were censured
No,
by Congress for lying with your
we can
egregious
stipulate to, you can stipulate to all your personal attacks on the Democratic members of the committee.
personal attacks. You've been
So-
attacking
so-
my FBI director. You've been attacking my office. You've been
But what
attacking
we're interested in.
borders
What we're
are.
interested in is the answer to these oversight questions.
You want your
So
no,
you were
oversight.
asked,
you want
you
your
were
5
asked by my
minutes of
colleague,
fame
you were asked by my colleague.
attacking good people.
Regular order, Madam Chair, so I can ask a question. You were asked by my colleague from Vermont whether you will support providing a video or audio tape, if it exists, of Mr. Holman taking $50,000 in bribe money from the FBI. Will you support a request by this committee to provide that tape or tapes to the committee? Yes or no?
Senator Schiff, you can talk to Director Patel about that.
Well, I'm talking to you about it. You're the Attorney General. This will be your decision. Will you
You
support?
don't have to tell me what is my decision and
Well,
what is
then-
not my
then-
decision.
then-
I
and
said
and
you
you
can
don't
talk
have
to
to-
Director
and you
Patel.
don't have to try to-
You think
you
you've
don't
got a
have to-
gotcha with Tom Homan, our
Excuse me,
border czar,
excuse me, you
who's
don't-
been out there
excuse me.
fighting for our country
Madam
since
Chair,
Donald Trump took office.
I'm trying to ask a question. Regular order, please. And you don't have to defer to the FBI director to pass the buck. So I'm asking you, will you support a request so that the committee, or indeed, I believe the American people should be able to see that video or audio tape? Will you support that request?
Will you apologize to Donald Trump
So
for
I
trying
guess,
to
I guess
impeach
the
him
answer is you won't support that
after
request.
you now know that
So
Joe
let
Biden
me-
tried
let
to
me
cover up
do
Hunter
this.
Biden's involvement with
Excuse
Ukraine?
me, let me do this, because I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today. So these are just some of the questions you refused to answer, or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyers, as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing, when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Holman kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Holman paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question.
You
were
have
asked,
a law degree,
excuse
Senator
me,
Schiff?
excuse me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did you approve the firing of antitrust lawyers who disagreed with the Hewlett-Packard merger? You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you support a restoration fund for violent insurrections to attack the Capitol on January 6th. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you were firing career professionals, career prosecutors, just because they worked on January 6th investigations. You refused to answer that question. You were asked by my California colleague whether you believe government officials, like immigration officials, have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my time is over.
You've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your
You can
entire
attack me later,
career.
and I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all day to day.
Canned attacks on you?
This is supposed to be...
No one needs a canned attack on you.
Regular order, Madam Chair, I'm trying to speak. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing of the Justice Department. And it comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing, and it comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing when dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. This is, and now
What
the current
about the
president.
fires in California?
And
Do you
this
care
is
about that,
supposed to
Senator
be,
Schiff?
this is, excuse me, this is supposed to be an oversight hearing in which members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about the
Are the
cover-up-
riots in
about the
LA
cover-up-
serious?
About the cover-up of corruption, about the prosecution of the president's enemies. And
I think you owe the president an apology.
When will it be
Your entire career,
that the
frankly.
members of this committee on a bipartisan basis demand answers to those questions and refuse to accept
Clearly, you're a
personal,
failed lawyer
refuse
because
to
you don't
accept,
understand when
excuse
someone
me,
can and cannot
refuse
answer
to
a
accept
question.
personal slander as an answer to those questions?
Personal slander.
With
Will you
that, Madam
apologize
Chair,
to Donald
I yield
Trump for
back.
slandering him? Personal slander.
Senator
May I ask unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to introduce into the record the statement of 1,000 former Justice Department officials who warned that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. May I also request unanimous consent for the introduction into the record of 282 former career officials at the Justice Department raising an alarm who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions taken by the Department of Justice. May I introduce with unanimous consent the Justice Department manual that talks about when initiating and declining charges are subject to impermissible considerations. And finally, Madam Chair, may I introduce the letter from Michael Ben-Ari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, DOJ, a letter he nailed to his door, which concludes by urging officials to do the right thing for the right reasons, to follow the facts and the law, and raises the alarm that the decision to remove experienced career officials from U.S. attorneys' offices, the FBI, and critical parts of DOJ undermines our country's abilities to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others that seek to harm our nation and its citizens. And he believes that the priority is prosecuting the president's enemies
or are you admitting
rather than
Ms.
protecting the
Bondi,
country.
one moment.
May I have unanimous
Are you
consent to enter
entering
these
that
into the record?
without objection?
Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Brett.
Senator Moody, may I clarify one thing he entered in the record? I just want to say that I believe he entered a letter by 200 and something former employees. Well, I believe the spokesperson for that letter was also the spokesperson for Jack Smith.
Senator Brett.